facing a letter from Brando that I like even better than the other. What did Brando say in the letter? I'm not going to tell you. Calm, disciplined, respected. For more than 50 years, Hollywood saw Robert Duvall as the ultimate professional, the quiet storm behind some of cinema's greatest performances. But now, at 94 years old, the man who rarely spoke about anyone has finally let the truth slip. And it shocked everyone. In a rare moment of brutal honesty, Duvall named 6 actors he called the enemy. They weren't rivals from afar. They were men he once admired, trusted, and even loved. His idol, his brother, his teacher, and every single one of them was a Hollywood legend. So, who made the list? What could turn admiration into resentment and respect into lifelong silence? This is top 6 actors Robert Duvall hated the most. Number 1. Francis Ford Coppola. In Hollywood, few creative partnerships burned as brightly or ended as bitterly as the one between Robert Duvall and Francis Ford Coppola. It all started in 1971 when Coppola was casting The Godfather. Surrounded by producers, he pointed at Duvall and said, "He's the Tom Hagen I've been looking for." That single line changed Duvall's life. Coppola didn't just give him a role. He gave him a legacy. Together, they defined what authenticity looked like on screen. But years later, that same man would push him past his limits and then, in Duvall's eyes, betray him. The cracks began on the set of Apocalypse Now, 1976 to 1979. Duvall collapsed from dehydration while filming the now iconic napalm sequence. His lips split and his skin blistered from the heat. Coppola, obsessed with perfection, didn't flinch. "Do it again," he ordered. "The light isn't right." Duvall, ever the soldier, obeyed, vomiting blood between takes. The film went on to win the Palme d'Or, but Duvall's respect for Coppola never recovered. As he later told a friend, he stopped seeing actors as people. "We were just props for his genius." By the late 80s, their professional tension had curdled into something colder. During pre-production for The Godfather Part 3, Duvall was offered $1 million for his return as Tom Hagen, while Al Pacino was promised 5 times that amount, plus profit participation. The numbers weren't just unequal. To Duvall, they were insulting. He walked out of the negotiations and never looked back. When reporters pressed him for details, Duvall didn't hold back. "I won't act in a film about family," he said, "if that family doesn't respect each other." It was a statement that landed like a thunderclap across Hollywood, a rebuke not just of the studio but of Coppola himself. Coppola, blindsided by the public fallout, tried to make amends. He sent Duvall handwritten letters, apologized privately, and told Variety, "Bob's one of the finest actors I've ever known. I wish he'd come home." But Duvall stayed silent. When asked years later if they ever spoke again, he simply said, "No. Sometimes silence says enough." The rift never healed. They attended the same industry events, the same tributes to The Godfather, but never shared a word. Insiders who saw them at the 2011 Oscars reunion described it as 2 ghosts in the same room. Number 2. Al Pacino. To Robert Duvall, acting was never about fame or power. It was about principle. He came from the old school, discipline, respect, and fairness. Which is why when his longtime friend Al Pacino crossed a line, Duvall didn't argue. He walked away for good. In the 1970s, they were brothers in everything but blood. They shared an apartment in Beverly Glen, splitting rent, noodles, and dreams. Together they became legends in The Godfather, Duvall the conscience, Pacino the fire. But when The Godfather Part 3 went into production, that brotherhood collapsed. Paramount's offer said it all. Pacino $5 million plus profits. Duvall $1 million flat. Duvall folded the papers, stood, and left. Hours later, Coppola received a fax. "I won't return just to be someone's backdrop." That line ended a 20-year friendship. When asked years later, Duvall said simply, "You can't preach family on screen and forget it off screen." Pacino tried to keep the peace. Bob's a great actor, he said, but he never offered to bridge the gap. Duvall saw that silence as proof the Bond was gone. When The Godfather Part 3 premiered without him, critics felt the loss. When Duvall left, wrote the Chicago Tribune, the saga lost its moral compass. At the 2011 Oscars reunion, the two men stood only feet apart. No handshake, no words, just history. Today, there's no feud, only distance. Pacino still calls Duvall a giant. Duvall never says his name. What began as brotherhood ended in silence. Proof that in Hollywood, family is easy to play but impossible to keep. Number 3. Stanley Kubrick. If there was one thing Robert Duvall could not stand, it was arrogance disguised as art. He believed acting was about truth lived in human and raw. Directors were supposed to guide emotion, not suffocate it with ego or obsession. So when he spoke about Stanley Kubrick, he didn't mince words. At a 2010 Hollywood Reporter roundtable, Duvall stunned the entire panel when he said, "To me, the great Stanley Kubrick was an actor's enemy. I can point to movies he's done, the worst performances I've ever seen." The room froze. Ryan Gosling raised his eyebrows. Jeff Bridges tried to laugh it off, but Duvall wasn't joking. His tone was cool, his stare unwavering. What he felt wasn't petty rivalry. It was moral disgust. To Duvall, Kubrick's obsession with control was cruelty disguised as perfectionism. "How can he tell the difference between the first take and the 70th?" he once asked. "That's not directing. That's draining." Watching The Making of The Shining only deepened that conviction. He saw actress Shelley Duvall, no relation, swinging a baseball bat 127 times while Kubrick coldly ordered, "Do it again." To Duvall, that wasn't art. It was punishment. Their paths nearly crossed once. Kubrick had reached out to discuss a role in the Aryan Papers. Duvall flew to London for the meeting and left more disturbed than impressed. He talked for half an hour about lighting and lenses, Duvall recalled, but not once about emotion. The air in that room was colder than a morgue for Duvall. Kubrick represented everything wrong with modern filmmaking. Intellect without empathy, mastery without mercy. Years later, when critics called Kubrick a genius, Duvall wouldn't join the chorus. In an interview with Esquire, he said simply, "He was a genius." Yes, but a genius without a heart. That single sentence sent shock waves through Hollywood. Directors whispered that Duvall had crossed a line, but he didn't care. "Someone had to say it," he told a friend. "You don't destroy people to make great movies." Kubrick, ever reclusive, never responded publicly. Those who knew him said he read Duvall's quote and shrugged. "Actors always want sympathy," he reportedly told a colleague. "They forget the film lasts longer than their feelings." That was the difference between them. Kubrick worshipped the frame. Duvall worshipped the soul. The feud never healed. Not that it ever truly began. They never worked together, never reconciled, never spoke again. And when Kubrick died in 1999, Duvall didn't attend the memorial. He sent no flowers, only a line through his publicist. "We remember the work, not the warmth." Number 4. Marlon Brando. To Robert Duvall, acting was sacred, a craft built on discipline, truth, and restraint. So when he met Marlon Brando on The Godfather set in 1971, he expected to meet a master. Instead, he met the man who would destroy his idea of what real acting meant. Duvall had studied Brando's performances in On the Waterfront and A Streetcar Named Desire like holy texts. But when Brando arrived 2 hours late, cigarette in hand, sunglasses on, assistants trailing, the illusion shattered. He refused rehearsals, demanded cards taped to walls, and improvised entire scenes. To Duvall, it wasn't genius. It was chaos. He was the soul of the film, Duvall later said, and the enemy of every actor inside it. Their silent feud deepened when Paramount secretly paid Brando a $50,000 bonus. Duvall walked out in disgust, but the breaking point came at the 1973 Oscars when Brando sent activist Sachin Littlefeather to reject his award on live TV. He turned our work into a protest. Duvall told a friend that night wasn't about justice. It was about Brando. Brando dismissed the criticism. Bob's a fine actor, he said, but he takes things too seriously. Rules are made to be broken. To Duvall, that was the problem. Brando had replaced art with ego. When Brando died in 2004, Duvall refused to attend the funeral, sending Coppola a note with 3 words, "Let it end." Even decades later, he never softened. He was great once, Duvall said. Then he started believing it. The man who inspired him became in the end everything he swore never to be. Proof that for Robert Duvall, brilliance without discipline was no genius at all. Number 5. Bruce Beresford. In Hollywood, some feuds burn fast and fade. Others linger quietly, etched into legend. For Robert Duvall, his fallout with director Bruce Beresford was the latter, a wound sealed in silence, but never healed. It began in 1983 on the set of Tender Mercies, the film that would finally earn Duvall his first and only Oscar. On paper, it should have been a perfect partnership. Beresford, the meticulous Australian filmmaker known for his quiet precision, and Duvall, the American craftsman whose performances felt carved from honesty. But on set, that chemistry turned combustible. Beresford demanded take after take, trying to fix what he called the rhythm of Duvall's performance. The actor snapped back. A drunk man never speaks slowly. It wasn't ego. It was instinct. Duvall believed Beresford was polishing away the truth of a broken man. When the director refused to budge, Duvall took matters into his own hands. At dawn one morning, without permission, he secretly shot his character's church performance with a small crew. That stolen footage would later become the emotional centerpiece of the film. When Tender Mercies swept through award season, tension turned to quiet hostility. Duvall won Best Actor at the 1984 Oscars. As he took the stage, he thanked the screenwriter, the crew, even the extras, but not the director. The pause was deliberate. The audience felt it. The next morning, the Hollywood Reporter headline read, "Duvall ignores Beresford at the Oscars." Asked about it later, Duvall didn't deny a thing. "Sometimes you have to choose loyalty to the character or to someone else," he said on Inside the Actor's Studio. To him, Beresford had tried to direct the soul out of a man who was already shattered. Duvall saw it as his duty to protect that truth, even if it meant rebellion. Beresford's response, printed in the Sydney Morning Herald, was measured but pointed. "I respect him, but we can never work together again." He described Duvall as a brilliant actor but difficult beyond reason. Privately, crew members said the two men never spoke after the shoot, not even on the press tour. The feud never ended. Duvall went on to write and direct The Apostle, a film he described pointedly as what happens when you let an actor follow the truth. Beresford continued his career quietly, but every time Tender Mercies was mentioned, critics remembered the silence, that missing thank you heard around the world. Today, the film remains a masterpiece, but the bond behind it is long gone. Duvall still calls it a story that belonged to me. Beresford, when asked about the experience years later, simply said it was a good film but a painful one. Number 6. Robert Niro. Robert Duvall has never been the kind of man to shout. His contempt doesn't come in explosions. It comes in pauses, in the sharp silence between words. And when it came to Robert Niro, that silence spoke louder than any argument ever could. Their tension began quietly after The Godfather Part 2. Both men were hailed as the new faces of serious acting. Both came from the